Good morning, students. Today I will teach you our second lesson from our second book, The Address, written by Marga Minko. Marga Minko, who was born in 1920, is a Dutch journalist and writer. She was born in an Orthodox Jewish family. Her first book was published in 1957 under the title The Bitter Herb. Now, the detailed summary of the lesson, the address. And on the basis of this summary, I'm sure you will definitely will be able to learn the lesson and the important questions. The story, the address is all about the human predicament that follows the war. The story narrates how a daughter goes to her native palace in Holland in search of her mother's belonging after the war. At the beginning of the story, it is narrated how the protagonist, the central figure, was given a cold reception welcome when she went to her native birthplace after the war in search of her mother's belongings, possessions, things. After ringing the bell of the house number 46 in Marconi Street, this is the address where the acquaintance of her mother lived, where her mother stored her belongings. A woman opened the door. On being introduced, that woman kept staring, gazing, looking intently at her in silence. Here the word her stand for the narrator. There was no sign of recognition of her on her face. The woman was wearing her mother's green knitted woven cardigan. The narrator could understand that she had made no mistake, means she is on the right address. She asked the woman whether she knew her mother. The woman could not deny this, although the woman was not interested in giving her the recognition, but she was also unable to deny the fact that she has recognized her. The narrator wanted to talk to her for some time, but the woman cautiously closed the door. The narrator stopped there for some time and then left the place. In the subsequent sections, the memories of the narrator bygone days, the days which have passed, come to light. Her mother had provided the address years ago during the war. She went to the home for a few days. She could find the various things were missing. At that time, her mother told her about Mrs. Darling. She happened to be an old acquaintance, familiar, well known, of the narrator's mother. Lately, after that, she had renewed contact with her and had been coming there regularly. Every time she left their house, she took something home with her. She told that she wanted to save all their nice possessions, things, belongings. The next day, the narrator saw Mrs. Darling going out of their house with a heavy suitcase. She had a slightly glimpse, jhalak, of Mrs. Darling's face. The narrator asked her mother whether the woman lived far away. At that time, the narrator's mother told about the address, house number 46 Marconi Street, where Mrs. Darling lived. The concluding part of the story describes the second visit of the narrator. As the narrator's first visit yielded no results, there was no results from the first meeting of the narrator. So she planned to go once again. Interestingly, this time a girl of 15 years old opened the door to her. Her mother was not at home. Here the word her stands for the daughter of Mrs. Darling. The narrator expressed her wish to wait for her. Now the narrator wanted to wait for that girl's mother so that she can meet her and talk to her about their relationship with her mother. The girl accompanied her to the passage. The narrator saw an old-fashioned FASHIONED iron candle holder hanging next to a mirror. The girl made her to sit in the living room and went inside. The narrator was horrified to find herself in a room she knew and didn't know. She found herself in the midst of a familiar thing, which she longed to see again, but which troubled her in the strange atmosphere. She had no courage to look around her, but she no longer had the desire to possess, to have them. She got up, walked to the door, and left the room. She resolved, decided to forget the address and moved on. Now, some important word meaning related to the lesson. The first one is predicament, difficult situation, native, local, domestic, belonging, be linked to, protagonist, main character or the central figure, reception, welcome, knitted, woven, deny, refuse, cautiously, safely, subsequent, following, acquaintance, familiar, fleeting, short-lived, ill, result, horrified, frightful, midst, among, resolved, decide. Now, the important question of the lesson. Some important question of the lesson. Question first. How does the narrator feel certain that she had come to the right address? Answer. When the narrator reached the place, a woman opened the door. This woman was wearing the cardigan that used to be of her mother's. Thus, the narrator became certain that she had come to the right place. Question second. Did Mrs. Darling welcome the narrator to her house? Answer. No. Mrs. Darling didn't welcome the narrator at all. Mrs. Darling's behavior was very awkward towards the narrator. She didn't even let her in. She said that it was not convenient for her to talk to her at that time. She asked her to come some other day and then close the door. Question number third. Who was Mrs. Darling? Where did she live? Mrs. Darling was an acquaintance of the narrator's mother. It was with her that the narrator's mother had left her belonging at the time of the war. This woman lived at house number 46 in Marconi Street. Question number 4. When had the narrator met Mrs. Darling for the first time? It was the first half of the war. The narrator had come home for few days. The next morning, when the narrator came downstairs, she saw her mother seeing off a woman. She was Mrs. Darling. That time, narrator's mother got her introduced with Mrs. Darling first time. Now some important additional question for practice at home. Question first. What was the woman's reaction when the narrator introduced herself? Question second. Why did Mrs. Darling take away a number of things from the narrator's house? And the third one is, have you come back? Said the woman. I thought that no one had come back. Does this statement give some clue about the story? If yes, what is it? I hope these things will be helpful for you people to learn the lesson easily. Thank you and have a nice day.